big court day that we had, and later tonight we'll be talking about the court, and we would also be showing you, as we have done since the beginning of the John Dramani Mahama election petition, we'll be showing you the statement, witness statements that has been filed in the name of Johnson Adom-Otchere, the indefatigable General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, the party minority in Parliament, and also Dr. Pesa White, who we had suspected will be filing a witness statement for President John Dramani Mahama. We know that in his affidavit and in the petition, President Mahama said that he was going to rely upon at least 5 witnesses. As at date, he has called 2 witnesses. From tomorrow, the court is going to kickstart the trial. It's going to be interesting as Johnson Adom-Otchere and Pesa White mount the witness box. Ahead of that tomorrow, what we'll be doing tonight in the third part of the program is to show you what they have averred to, is to show you what they are testifying to, what have they written in the document, because what the courts do these days is that before a witness comes in, whatever he's going to say, it's documented, and that document is what has been shared, and that's what we'll share with you. And then we will look at some of the interesting ones to look out for, because it is based on this document that they will be interviewed by the lawyers from the opposition, sometimes by their own lawyers, and there will be clarification sought on all of the matters. Johnson Adom-Otchere put in 40 paragraphs. Can you imagine? 40 paragraphs. We'll walk you through all that tonight. But later tonight, lawyer Moses Foh-Amoaning is in the studio. He is also a lecturer in civil procedure and a very seasoned practitioner of the law. He will be talking to us about Flight Lieutenant Rawlings. Many people did not know that he had a very peculiar relationship with Flight Lieutenant Rawlings from his days at the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Moses Foh-Amoaning has agreed to tell us that story. He's told me some of it, and I'm sure those of you who know him, you have also heard some of it. But it's a very interesting story. We'll take the opportunity of he being in the studio to take a few commentary, to take some commentary, I should say, on the ongoings at the Supreme Court. He's told me that he's not going to commit himself to say anything in detail, but when lawyers say that, it just means that they will be careful what they say. But he will tell us something. And he's a fountain of knowledge, Moses, when it comes to practicing the law. And we hope to hear a lot of things from him tonight, even relating to the interrogatories and the Supreme Court's refusal on an original application and on the review application, both to refuse Mr. Chikata and the NDC the permission for interrogatories to be admitted. That's the big story from the court today, by the way. The Supreme Court, by a 9-0 unanimous decision, decided that Mr. Chikata's interrogatories will not be admitted. Therefore, the 12 questions that he had laid down for Jean Adukwe-Mensah to answer will not be answered by Jean Adukwe-Mensah. As you know, in the original application, 7 judges of the Supreme Court empaneled to hear the election petition had the argument, and they ruled unanimously that Mr. Chikata is not entitled to express those interrogatories and to file them, and thus those interrogatories will not be part of the court document. Also, Mr. Chikata then filed a review application, which he's entitled to under the Constitution, and usually and typically during a review process, 2 more judges will be added. So 2 judges were added in the persons of Alhaji Tanko and the Venerable Henrietta Mensah Bonsu. They were added to the panel to become 9, and so from tomorrow the Supreme Court will revert to the original panel of 7. In the 9 panel decision, it was held unanimously that Mr. Chikata has not demonstrated sufficient relevance to the interrogatory. So that's the court's ruling today. We'll, however, begin this program on a very sad note, and it is a very, very, very sad note. Those of you who have seen the posters on social media, you know that we have talked about COVID-19. Now, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 is a serious matter. Well, it started with all of us being afraid of COVID-19, and then COVID-19 eventually came. People tested positive. Somehow we sort of noticed that people get COVID-19 and they get well. And even in the public broadcast by the President and the Ministry of Information, they would usually report the number of recoveries just to encourage everybody. It appears that with those encouragements that came from the broadcast, because we were too afraid of it, all of us probably let our guard down. COVID-19 went down, is severely back again. For us in the studio, it's a very personal loss to us. This man I'm going to talk about is the youngest death of COVID-19 in Ghana. He's 37 years old. He's a guy who lives in Britain. He was in Ghana during the Christmas holidays. And God has forgiven us, all of us who in the Christmas holidays went to party left and right. God has forgiven us. Let us never do that again. This is COVID-19 season. We have to be very, very careful. We have to wear our mask. And as I have been told to say over and over again, we have to also social distance. It's not just wearing of the mask. We have to social distance. It's very, very key. This young man gave us a brilliant interview in 2019. You remember that in 2019, we went over to the United Kingdom and we did what we call the London Files. During the UK election, when Ghanaians were running for UK Parliament, Adom-Otchere, one of those who was in Thamesmead, we went over there to speak to her. And whilst we were in London, we decided to look at Ghanaian businesses that are doing well, second generation Ghanaian businesses. That's the gentleman. He gave us an interview. He was in Ghana for Christmas. Uncle John's Bakery. This is Uncle John's son. He's dead. He died of COVID-19. He died yesterday. He's dead. He's gone. He's 37. I don't think he had any comorbidities, but he's dead because he contracted COVID-19. It's such a sad day for us. It's a day also to tell our viewers that this matter is a serious matter. It's a very, very serious matter, and it kills. It can kill you. You can die, and you can be young, and you can still die. Look, I'm going to show you the video. This is a solid young man, really, really great young man who has inherited his father's business. He's a second generation born in London. He's inherited his father's business, which is a business that's infused with Ghanaian culture because they are baking bread. They are baking bread the Ghanaian way. They are doing meat pie. They are doing sweet bad. They are doing both fruit. They do all of that in North London at Seven Sisters, which has a big Ghanaian and Jamaican community. They have sold the Ghanaian bread to all over Britain. Then every generation of different kinds of people, Belgians, Dutch, Germans, British, all those in Britain are eating Uncle John's bread, which is the original Ghanaian bread. This young man went to school and decided to take up his father's business and become the entrepreneur that he wanted to become, which is what he studied in school. He was in Ghana for Christmas holidays because he's been coming to Ghana every now and then. Since they grew up, they all like coming to Ghana. You know, Ghanaian children born abroad, they grow up and they get to know that all the things they read about Ghana and Africa is not true, that we don't live on trees. They just fall in love with Ghana. These young people, they just fall in love with Ghana. And he came to Ghana Christmas time. He had such a good time. He was excited that he was in his motherland. Now he's dead. Have a look at the video. This is he talking to us in London. Uncle John's Bakery has been working for the Ghanaian years. It's such an interesting story because the next generation has taken over. His son is being trained to take over the business, and we are so delighted that the Ghanaian has been able to do this. Watch this next interview talking to Uncle John's son. His name is Sam, and how they manage the bakery and the catering business here. Ghanaians should be proud of this. Tell me everything you have here. So we are now at Uncle John's Bakery. It is the biggest bakery and catering business owned by a Ghanaian across all of Europe. And I'm talking to Sam, his son. Now, Sam is a second generation British. His father is Uncle John. He was born here and he's lived here all his life. He studied media at the university, but he's a big manager of this business and he's the director of the company. Thank you, Sam, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Today has been very tough and we wasted a bit of your time. We've been all over, so we heard you went back and forth, and we're happy that you're here.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
So tell us about this business. I mean, you're now sort of really managing this business as a second generation British with Ghanaian parents.
Yeah. So basically, my parents have run the business for 25 years. It's been running for, and I took over from probably about the past 4 to 5 years now. So we've always been like a local store serving the community within London, and we've managed to scale up to get 2 factories that we scale from. We go as far as Scotland, we go as far as Liverpool, Leeds, Leicester, Belgium, France, Germany. And we're just trying to expand our reach into further territories where there are Afro-Caribbean people there.
Yeah. So what do you basically do? Bakery means what? Bread or what you're seeing here?
So yeah, basically it's just Ghanaian baked goods. So we do all the traditional kind of stuff, which is going to be sweet bread, tea bread, buns bread, buffalo, which is the donuts, Ghanaian donuts, chin chin, Shito we also do, meat pie, fish pie, chicken pie. So we just got a variance of different kind of items, and we also do catering as well for different kind of corporations as well.
So you studied media and communication, but this is your main business. Were you studying media to do this, or you have to do this because of family business?
My route was definitely different from doing this. The only reason why I got involved was more or less part of legacy, was to kind of identify, you know, my parents were first generation in this country, I'm second generation, and I feel like, especially with, you know, young black people, they don't really get a chance to see people that take on a business and further it, which, you know, people have been doing for many years, and I think it's time that, you know, we do also the kind of same thing and bring businesses forward and take it to the next generation, something for our kids and kids and kids to enjoy.
So do you have a relationship with Ghana, whether it's politics, it's sociology, society, it's food you would have a relationship with, but do you have a relationship with Ghana's politics, culture, economics?
In regards to the politics and stuff, not really. You know, for instance, we do stuff a lot with Ghana High Commission over here, and we facilitate anything to do with food. Food brings people together. When it comes down to politics, I don't really tend to get involved too much. But for us, it's always about the people. Our customers are our base. They are everything. So what the people want is what we try and deliver to them.
There was differences in homes here for first generation and second generation people when the Brexit vote came about. Some of the young people like you voted to remain, some of their parents voted to exit. Did you have that kind of conversation with your father, your mother? Was there some conversation in the home about what you do, and did you vote, and how did you vote?
To be honest, at the time I didn't vote. I wasn't in the country. But when it comes down to voting, I think it's just down to understanding what you are voting for, which sometimes I feel people can be a bit misinformed. So when it comes down to an election and understanding why a country wants to leave, it's not just based on the demographic of people that are in the country. It's also going to be based on trade deals that go on. It's going to be based on different infrastructures that are built within the country as well. So I think everybody needs to gain a good understanding. So I went and did my own kind of research to find out what it is if we stay, what it is of what we leave. To be honest, I'm still trying to make up my mind.
Would you vote on Thursday, by the way?
Will I vote on Thursday? Yes, I will. I'll go and vote on Thursday. I'm still going through the manifestos at the moment, just trying to understand exactly what the governments are going to plan to do. But the way I always kind of see it is it's always a plan. It's action that's going to speak. So it's just really going through the manifesto and deciding what is the best kind of.
Do you read about Ghana and what do you see when you read, and what do you like when you read, and what do you not like when you read?
The thing with Ghana, what I like about Ghana at the moment is that they've shifted from a lot of the old kind of methods of doing things. What I didn't like about Ghana before was the corruption, not knowing that you could get certain businesses in place and do it in a way that is honest. But I think now that they're building solid infrastructures, they're getting a lot of the diaspora over to come and do good businesses over there, and, you know, kind of bring like the Western kind of approach, but back home basically, and build our economy back home as it should be. We've got lots of resources back home in Ghana, and there's so much stuff that can be done. So I like the way it's going, and this year is the year of the return. So there's loads of people going back to Ghana, and I hope it's not just for a period of time, but it's for a lifetime.
So you are the director of this company. Would you set up a business in Ghana?
Yeah, I mean, there's been talks of us going back to go and set up in Ghana and facilitate it with the same infrastructure that we've got over here, because when it comes down to infrastructure, that's very important to me in terms of good health and hygiene with your products, making sure you deliver high quality customer service, and these things are very important. And when you travel to another country, anywhere you go in the world, you expect good service, and I think that's something that we can work better on, not just us as a company, but as a country as well. There are certain companies that can, you know, push the boundaries a bit. You go to countries like Dubai, you go to countries like Singapore, and you get really good service there. So it's, you know, people love Africa. They love our food, they love our music, they love the people. So why not give them what they need and what they should have?
Thank you very much, Sam. Now I want some bull fruit, and I'll get it. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Cheers. What can we say? We can just say rest in peace. But that's the story of COVID. COVID-19 is really ravaging all over the place. This young man passed, you know, he died yesterday in Ghana. It's a guy, I've said it over and over again. It's very, very important that we observe the protocols And when we feel unwell, we report it immediately. Sometimes we feel unwell, and we do that all the time. And we want to wait for the next day, and we want to sleep over it and drink a bit of water. Yeah, all that is good. But in this era of COVID-19, as soon as we feel unwell, we should report to the relevant people. And we should also take instructions from the qualified people. That's also very important, because we're also used to always like just malaria, and I've taken malaria treatment, and I got antisonate, or I got something, chloroquine and all of that. We do that a lot. This COVID-19 is a serious matter. As soon as you feel unwell, body pains, vomiting, etc., even if you feel like malaria, you just have to go and to the hospital, report yourself, they take your temperature, then they will diagnose you properly. It's very, very important that we don't treat the wrong thing when we may actually be dealing with COVID-19, because COVID-19 is new, so its symptoms are not obvious to us. Malaria is very old, so its symptoms are obvious to us. Flu is very old, so its symptoms are obvious to us. A cough is very old, so its symptoms are obvious to us. But COVID-19 is not obvious, and the danger of COVID-19 is that it could sometimes, in its manifestation, combine all of these symptoms of malaria, of cold, of flu. All of that could be combined in COVID-19. These days, it comes with body pains as well. I've heard people complain about that, excessive and severe body pains. So let's do our best. Let's do our best to help ourselves. We cannot be losing young people like this, serious people like that, people who are willing to develop our economy, people who are willing to use their youthfulness to build businesses that other people can benefit from. We cannot continue to do that. We can't continue to do that. We can't lose people like that. COVID-19 is real. May some all really rest in peace. Some all rest in perfect peace with the bosom of the Lord until we meet again at the final resurrection. Amen. Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much. And I have to say that apologies for the Metro TV picture on DSTV. All kinds of calls are coming into our studio and onto our phones. We apologize for the inability of those of you trying to watch on DSTV channel 277. The picture is frozen. We have contacted Multi-Choice, and they are eagerly working on it. Hopefully they will get back before the end of the program, but that happens every now and then. We are sorry about that. It's equipment we are dealing with, so we don't know why. So our audience on Facebook, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. You are our biggest audience tonight. And for our audience also on T1 and T2, thank you very much also for watching. Okay, so in this segment, we are going to talk about 20 years of Good Evening Ghana. Now, by the grace of God, delightfully, this year, Good Evening Ghana is 20 years old. And we began sometime in, I think, April, was it? We're still trying hard to find out when we began. We're looking through the tapes. We all cannot remember. I mean, what I remember, though, is that the first program of Good Evening Ghana was the program in the studio. I was the host, and the guests were Dr. Papa Kwesi Indum, and now the late Mr. Edward Salia, who was at that time a former minister, and Dr. Indum was the new political kid on the block. I remember that very well. Dr. Indum had just been elected, I believe, as a member of parliament for KEA at that time. And so we had an interesting discussion on the maiden edition. We are still trying to find out what days that occurred. But throughout this year, as we celebrate the 20th anniversary, we'll bring you a playback of some of the tapes of Good Evening Ghana so that you can enjoy it. We're going to show you a few teasers of three important programs tonight, just before Moses Foh-Amoaning joins us in the studio. The first one is just a 2.5 to 3 minute clip. Now, this one is important because in this day, 13th February of 2005, Ghana was at the same place where it is today. Parliament's Appointments Committee had started hearing the interviews with President Kufuor's appointees. And there was a particular problem with 3 appointees, and there had been confusion at the Appointment Committee at the vetting, and their names had been sent to the whole Parliament for voting. These persons were Dr. Richard Anani, unfortunately the former Central Regional Minister, the Honorable Adom-Otchere, who passed, may he rest in peace, and Sheikh I.C. Kwe, who is happily still with us. Let's go to Good Evening Ghana all the way 2005. Hear my introduction in the studio, introducing the major speech that was given that day by the Honorable Alban Sumani Kingsford Bagbin, who at that time was the minority leader. Don't laugh too much. Time works on all of us. Welcome back to Good Evening Ghana. Tonight we are talking 2 issues: minorities walk out of Parliament, and also the Valentine and the spiritual significance. As you would know, the President nominated 35 ministers for the consideration of Parliament. As per Article 78 of the Republican Constitution, Parliament has a right to view or interview the President ministers before they become ministers. The prior approval of Parliament is requested by the Constitution before a person becomes a substantive minister. So the Appointments Committee of Parliament, which does the hearings, conducted its interviews and excluded three ministers: Dr. Richard Anani, Sheikh I.C. Kwe, and Mr. Adom-Otchere for the Central Region. In respect of Dr. Richard Anani, he's alleged to have transferred $100,000 or $90,000 to a lady with whom he had an affair, an extramarital affair that produced a baby. The lady's name is Alexandra O'Brien, and he's alleged to have transferred $90,000 to the woman. The investigation committee set out to find out whether Dr. Anani did transfer the money and whether, in fact, he had capacity to transfer that money without recourse to public funds. In the case of Sheikh I.C. Kwe, he's alleged to have tendered a certificate to the Appointments Committee, which certificate was not real. These matters were investigated, and today the Appointments Committee returned to the House with the information. The information was that there was no consensus and the House had to put it to vote. Minority insisted that the vote be a secret ballot. However, majority did not think that a secret ballot, in the terms that the minority looked at it, ought to be obeyed. The minority thought that if it's a secret ballot, then the procedure has to be that members of Parliament will receive the ballot papers, go to the center of the chamber, vote whichever way they wanted, and drop it into the ballot box. The majority also, however, thought that the way it's been done in Parliament is that MPs are given the ballot paper, they vote on their seats, and the voting paper is collected from them. The minority thought that the case would be repeated when they were voting for the Speaker, when the MPP invoked the 3-line whip, where every MPP member who voted was required to show it to another MPP member to be sure that they were voting according to the party's position. Now, this created some arguments in the parliament, and the minority walked out. They will have none of that. At the end of the day, the majority voted all by themselves. 119 out of the 120 members in the parliament at the time voted in favor of Sheikh I.C. Quay. One ballot was destroyed. The same 119 voted for Dr. Richard Adan, and one ballot was destroyed. And in the case of Edumazi, 116 voted for him, and 3 voted against him. That was the conclusion of the House, and so the 3, as we stand, are deemed to be ministers of this republic, awaiting the induction of President J.A. Kufuor. Let's go to the parliament and see the response of Alban Bagbin, the minority leader. Later on, he held a press conference in his office, and we'll see that also. Let's go straight and see Alban Bagbin.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Sheikh I.C. Quay appeared before a similar appointments committee in 2001. And Mr. Speaker, he submitted a CV which is in the possession of this House and stated the schools he attended, institutions he attended, and the qualifications obtained. Now, the schools attended, apart from Police Training Depot Primary School, Achimato Training College, Practice School, Odogono Secondary School, he also stated that he attended Institute of Bankers, London, and...
Okay, welcome back. So that was 2005. We will show you 2 more tapes, and the other one is also very relevant because it's an interview with Nana Akufo-Addo in 2010. But that was 2005, so we'll move ahead a little bit. 2007, we held a program at the Elisa Hotel where we were discussing, in those days, the matters of homosexuality and gay had really hit our shores for the very first time. It was a very major issue at the time. So as Good Evening Ghana, trying to be the lead current affairs program, we took out audience to the Elisa Hotel and presented a live broadcast of a poolside conversation about homosexuality. Here it is. And this is Good Evening Ghana. We are coming to you live from Elisa Hotel here in Accra, and we are talking about the gay rights issue. If you're just joining us, the controversy was sparked by a statement by Professor Fred Sai about gayism, and since then there's been many definitions and many activities, some of it from officialdom, including the Western Regional Minister calling for the arrest of all gays and lesbians in the Western region. Tonight we have been told on the radio that gay is also a psychological defect. We are looking at this from a legal perspective. We'll take a public policy perspective. There's a psychological perspective and a cultural perspective as well. So be my guest tonight. From across the table, I have Mr. Kwame Kufu, who is a lawyer, distinguished member of the bar. Kwame Kufu has had successful interactions with the criminal code in Ghana at the courts here in Accra. Kwame, thank you very much for coming. He'll be helping us with the legal perspective and also political, cultural perspectives. Next to him, I have Dr. Lloyd Amoah. Dr. Lloyd Amoah is a public policy expert. He trained in China, and he's also a professor at Ashesi University. Lloyd will help us with the discussion. Thank you, Lloyd, for coming. It's a pleasure to have you. And I have with me Baba Al-Hassan, whose description we have designated as a former gay who is now reformed and who is helping people also to reform. Baba has graciously agreed to attend this interview, and we are very thankful to him and his sponsors, the Pentecost Church, who have accepted the invitation for Baba to join us and share some personal experiences with us tonight so that we can have a full program. Thank you very much, Baba, for coming.
Thank you.
And also we have in the studio, we have here at the poolside, which is our studio tonight. We have our studio audience, young men and a woman, who will be helping us with questions. They'll be asking us some of the relevant questions. Can we see them, our studio people? One young lady and a few gentlemen. Say hi to the camera. Say hello, everybody. Say hi. Yes, okay, there they are. They will be assisting us tonight with some questions. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to precede this discussion with this bias. In Genesis chapter 19, verse 1, there is a quotation that sort of discusses homosexuals for the first time for people who were studying the Bible. And Genesis is the first book of the Christian Bible, and stories recorded in Genesis are those that happened for the first time that the world was formed, for those who believe that the world was formed in the manner in which the Bible describes it. It says in chapter 19 that now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, "Hear now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night here, and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go your way." And they said, "No, but we will spend the night in the open square." But he insisted strongly that they turn to him and entered his house. Then he made them a feast, and these were angels apparently. He made them a feast and baked unleavened bread and ate with them. Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out, that we may know them carnally." So Lot went out to them through the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, "Please, my brethren, do not be so wicked. See now, I have two daughters," he says, "who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof." The men of Sodom were calling upon Lot to allow the angels to be carnally known by them, as the Bible says. Now, this is my own scripture reading that may not have a bearing on this discussion. Okay, that's another old one. That was a very interesting discussion. We do have all of these videos. We are trying to see what we should do with them for our 20th anniversary. But this is another one, a very big political interview that we had. This was in 2010, building up from those days. So this was 10 years ago. We were speaking to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Have a look. This very special edition of Good Evening Ghana is the MPP Congress this week, and the MPP is going to elect its flag bearer for the 2012 election. The MPP has been electing flag bearers ever since 1992, and the list is J. Kufuor, is Professor Dubois, and it's Nana Akufo-Addo, who was elected in 2007 December to lead the party to the last election. The MPP is going to elect its flag bearer again, and this evening we are very happy to bring to you an exclusive conversation with one of the front runners of the election. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is thought to be the front runner of this NPP race, and he has graciously allowed us into his living room to grant us this opportunity of a conversation. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much.
Hello,
it's a pleasure to see you again.
Nice to have you here.
I like your camouflage. I saw it on the campaign. You had a camouflage on.
What camouflage is that?
It was a brownish camouflage in Abosio kind. You're walking through the people. And your white canvas.
Yeah.
We'll be talking a lot tonight about politics, about the MPP Congress, your expectations, and how the country has been run over the last 18 months. And I'll also ask you, of course, how you felt about that defeat of the last election. So viewers, sit back. It's going to be a good interview. I'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, it's a conversation with Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He's presenting himself for the MPP's flag bearership race, which takes place on Saturday. This is a very different Congress the MPP is running. As you may already know, over 100,000 people are going to cast their ballot, and it promises to be quite a novel situation, and we in the media are observing it closely to see how it turns out. Thank you very much again, Nana Addo. In 2008, the first round, you led the election. You were thought to be the front runner by many international broadcast agencies. The opinion polls put you ahead, even by the BBC's polls. There was a question of whether you were going to win a first round or not. But you won the first round, and you led the ballot by over 100,000 votes. You were overtaken by your closest competitor, Professor Mills, who won the second round and was eventually sworn in as president. Must have been a very difficult time for you, and I want to know how you felt about it, as this is the first time we're speaking after the election. Oh,
clearly. I mean, in circumstances like that, one was bound to have felt very disappointed. I thought we'd done a lot of very good work. I thought we had a good record as a government to stand on, to make our appeal to the country. But it was always going to be a close election. I mean, we never had any illusions that this election was going to be a walkover and that it was going to be close. But obviously, hoping that the closeness will be in our favor. It turned out to be the So clearly a lot of disappointment. But really, as far as I was concerned, the disappointment was even much more for the followers of our party and the activists of our party, that they had got so close to the third term agenda, which is what we're after, but at the last minute fell short. So on a personal level, yes, great disappointment, but my feeling was much more about the party and its supporters and its sympathizers, both in Ghana and across the world, who had been disappointed in what had happened. And I felt more strongly about them than I did about myself. I've been in politics now for nearly 35 years, and I know that it's an up and down exercise. I mean, there are times you make it, there are times you don't. So personally, yes, I was disappointed. Clearly, I think it would be abnormal if one didn't feel a sense of disappointment.
Did you feel rejected as a candidate, as you had been rejected by the people?
I didn't.
At the second
And that's
ballot?
why I'm back. I didn't. I think that in an election which was in effect statistically a dead heat, you can't be talking about being rejected. The showing that we made was a strong one. Even though, and I think that this is something perhaps that the discussion that has taken place both in our party and in the country since the election has not focused on particularly strongly. The third term agenda is never easy. Yes, Tony Blair and the Labour Party did it in England, but they did it from a very, very, very strong background. I mean, they had won a huge majority in Blair's first term, which was being consistently whittled down since then. But as a rule, the third term agenda is not easy. We saw what happened to McCain, the Republican Party in America. But I think that what was heartening and encouraging for me is that despite the difficulties involved in the third term victory for a ruling party, was how strongly the MPP continued to show. At the end of the day, there were marked differences between what happened to us in 2008 and what happened, for instance, to the NDC in 2000. The ruling government at the time, its candidate, the then sitting vice president, arrived at the elections after 8 years of President Rawlings and managed what, 44%?
Okay, so throughout this year we'll be doing that and showing you where we have come from by the grace of God. We are 20 years old doing the same current affairs program. Thank you for all your patronage of the last 20 years and your patronage for the next 100 years. I'll take a short break now. When I come back, Brother Moses Foh-Amoaning will join us in the studio for a conversation that you cannot miss. And I have to say that delightfully, DSTV is back on stream, and so you can now watch our program on DSTV channel 277. If your phone is too small for you to be watching Good Evening Ghana, and your laptop is too small, or you don't want to use your data, go to 277 on DSTV. We are back on there. You can see it. After the break, Moses Foh-Amoaning joins us in the studio. welcome back to the show, and thank you very much for your time. Hopefully you have enjoyed what we've been doing so far. Tonight, we have Moses Foh-Amoaning in the studio. He's no mean a person, a lecturer in civil procedure, by all means a distinguished broadcaster and a seasoned practitioner of the law and a law teacher. And Moses is also a great Ghanaian and a seasoned Ghanaian, I should say. You see Moses sitting in front of the 3D of the court. It's very normal. That's what he's done all his life. Good evening, Moses.
Paul, this is magnificent. I must be honest with you. It's very impressive setting, and congratulations to all your partners who've invested in it. As a broadcaster, I feel very, very proud. It's just like walking to the studios of the BBC. This is really good. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Moses. We've been talking about Fly Lieutenant Rawlings, and tonight we'll talk about a few things. And I know that you knew him at a certain level, a peculiar level that other people did not know that you knew him at that level. And we all know that, I mean, every Ghanaian of my age, you know, over 40 years old, recognized Moses Foh-Amoaning from the 1990 World Cup. At that time, I'm not sure whether you were still a student or that you have left. But those of us who grew up in Birmingham also recognize you as Abeku. You know,
no, that's my brother. Abeku was my
Abeku
brother.
is your brother. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
have to be reminded of that. Okay. Okay, but
David
Moses is the
is in
Francophone
England
boy,
now.
the Methodist priest's son. So tell us about your first sort of connection with Rawlings, because those of us who are in Birmingham will know a lot about Rawlings and about his group of soldiers, the Pattington, Richter, Ado, and all of those people. But what was your first real connection with Rawlings?
Well, Paul, thanks a lot. The thing, I felt very sad watching him go away yesterday, and I must be grateful to you for the opportunity to eulogize him and to thank him for what he's done for the country, not only Ghana but also Africa as a whole. He really stands out, and I don't think anybody who is making a fair assessment of his life can say everything was negative. And I think the president echoed what almost everybody will consider fair, that history will be fair to him. Let me put it mildly. The thing is, and Paul, you know it because you're a barracks boy as well, in '79. And first of all, let's put him in perspective. You've got to look at him both as an individual, Jerry Rawlings as an individual, and then the factors that brought him into the Ghanaian political landscape, which go beyond him. I think if you do any proper analysis and you kind of mix the two, then you're probably going to make a mistake. Because there are those who say, he staged a coup in 1979. He didn't. That was not his coup. The 15th May was the uprising that he started. And if you're a barracks boy, if you were, you knew that something was going to happen. You know, my father gives anecdotes, because then we'd moved from 2BN, the 2nd Battalion of Infantry, and we'd gone to, then it was called Medium Mortar Regiment in Ho.
In Ho, yeah.
And Mensa Poku was one of the gentle, when the coup came, he was, quick, his name was mentioned. He was living with us in the Volta Barracks, and my dad tells interesting anecdotes of how, people used to garden. The officers' quarters, you have a little garden and you garden. And this man always had a radio with him. And according to my father, he would go with him, they would be chatting, and then he would say, you don't know what's going to happen. Clearly demonstrating that something was going to happen. So, and the difficulties in the country, the pressures, the economic circumstances, nobody needs to tell you that something
You
is
also
going.
told it that it must be Mensa Poku to his right-hand side, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Or is it Boachijan?
Yeah, that's Bajijan.
But Mensa Poku, you mentioned, was definitely be in that group of
Yes,
people.
yes, it definitely was in the group
Yeah.
in '79. He was part of
We'll
it.
find another photograph that is in.
He probably doesn't show here, but clearly something was going to happen. And so 15 May he tried it, 79 was Boachijan and others who saw, and the trial was very significant, because the trial was what made people hear who this man really was and what he stood for, okay? And once you could hear the way he articulated his position, that there was difficulty, there was corruption, people were going to go away with a lot of things that had been done which were wrong, which needed to be corrected, then the soldiers started saying, oh, okay, so that's why he's on trial. And his bravery also showed up when he said, well, let my other colleagues go away and hold me responsible. That's leadership, okay? Because it was his life that was going to be at stake, and he was prepared to say, as a good leader, because that's what officers are supposed to do. When they're in battle, they take the lead. And he was clearly made for that. So I think that those two, the combination of his capacity to capture the moment and also to show leadership, I think is what makes him outstanding. So I'm saying that when he popped
Capture the moment stayed with him for a very long time, because I'm sure that being in the armed forces, he was very sure that if he got the moment of the trial, whatever he said will resonate with all the things he was hearing in the barracks. So capturing the moment is something that stayed with Rawlings for a long time. He always sort of knew how to capture the moment.
Well, I mean, it's part of his magnetism, isn't it? You know, you can say it's opportunism, but he just felt that these things must come out and they must be heard. And he wasn't the only one speaking. You know, indeed, the reason why 4 June happened was that there were a number of other people who were planning. So others had to get ahead. Yes.
Multiple planning going
Exactly. Same with 31st. A lot of soldiers were planning things, you know. So it just happened that, you know, Boachi and others took the lead and, you know, whatever happened. I'm just reflecting what was happening in the barracks at that time. And, you know, linking up with how I got to, you know, because myself and my senior brother, you know, we were all 79. I was in Form 3, he was in Form 5. We recorded almost every, you know, speech that he made, you know, all the coup tapes. Don't forget that there was a lot of, when the coup happened.
You had started broadcasting very early.
No, we're recording it, you know, from radio.
But I'm saying that you had started your broadcasting skills and ethos
recording
very
it. And so he became a hero, like all of us, you know, when you're young, we were enthusiastic. My father wasn't, because as a, you know, a major in the army, he felt that staging a coup was not the right thing to do at all. So we will argue with Dad, and you know, he was very charismatic. He was appealing. He went for students. Everybody supported him. So you love him before you see him. That's the point I want to make. So I think all of us kind of fell in love with him, because not only because of charisma, but what he represented for us young people. He was challenging us to challenge the situation and do something better. And I think that appealed to all of us.
But after you grew up throughout the 80s and saw that, and then you went to law school, and you began to study human rights. And I hear that's always a point of departure of a lot of the Rawlings babies, when they're Rawlings fanatics at the primary school and secondary school, and they get to the Faculty of Law, the Department of Political Science, Sociology, History, where Dubois was. Then they begin to reflect, and they begin to understand human rights, and they remember the 3 High Court judges, they remember the executions of 79. Did you get that feeling that you arrived at the Faculty of Law? Everyone says that you were a favorite of Professor Kumado, who was a big constitutional lecturer, and one of those who didn't hide his concerns about human rights under Rawlings. Well, did you get the sense of maybe Jerry was wrong?
No, we always had lots of argument in class. Indeed, I'm sure when we get to the case, because this morning in the Supreme Court, there was a bit of it, you know, Professor Kote, Professor, you know, Mensah Bonsu, and Mr. Chikata. Reflection of the old legal tussle that took place in the faculty when, you know, we're students.
You know, the left and the right.
Yes, exactly. It was very exciting. I would tell you, you know, it was very exciting. And the interesting thing was, on this, you know, on this occasion, Mrs. Mensah Bonsu was the one on the side of, you know, this is the law as it is, and Mr. Chikata was the one propounding the law as it ought to be, you know, the values that had to go into deciding a particular case. It was very exciting, but you could see the old struggles that you were commenting about. But, you know, question, was I influenced? Did I change my own mind when I went to the law school, the faculty? I would say that because I grew up in the barracks, and you could see the things that had happened, and you were part of, you knew the situation in the country, you could at least make an objective statement that this man was not just representing himself, he was representing the views of what most Ghanaians thought was going wrong. What you could say was, well, was the proper strategy to overthrow a constitutionally established regime or not? That was the question that you could debate about and argue. But eventually, and I think, Paul, for me, that is his greatest legacy. You might say he came through the window, broke the window and came in. But at the end of the day, what happened? He opened the door, held it open, so that all of us who believed in democracy could walk in. That, for me, is a great legacy. I mean, and look at the history of the world, the world over. America, they had to go through a civil war, a revolution, before the American Constitution itself was established. Look at England. You know, a king was murdered. He was beheaded before you had the stability. So it seems as if countries must always go through that upheaval before you got stability. So, and he was very prophetic. You know, one of the recordings that myself and my brother kept of him was his statement very early on 31st December that this is a coup to end all coups. What happened? It was true. Because I can count 20 or 30 attempts from 81 till 92 when Ghana, we popped into constitutional era. It ended all coups. What has happened? 28 years of going of a stable democratic environment. You know, so you can say also he's a man of destiny. And he seemed to believe in what he was doing. Because I remember the Jiwa coup when it happened. After it was quelled, he came out and said, well, if you're on the right side of God, then God protects you. You know, and a lot of the stories that you hear about how he was, they quelled some of the coup d'etats and he, saved himself from getting killed. You can say there was a divine hand protecting him and propelling him to do exactly what, he did. So you can say he was a man of destiny.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the simple answer to your question, the debate went on in the faculty as to whether it was the right thing to do, whether overthrowing the Constitution was the right thing to do. But ultimately, what he's bequeathed to Ghana, I think we should all be very
My question is really about human rights. As you know that Kwesi Pratt and Kweku Baako have a list of people who vanished during the era, and we can all talk about the 3 High Court judges and the retired army officer, something that Jerry never apologized for, and it came up in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but he didn't give any testimony on it because the commission had invited him for 2 specific tapes, and he said he didn't have them. And Justice Adom-Otchere, his lordship, discharged Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, much to the disappointment of many Ghanaians because they thought that he would be interrogated on the issues of what he knows about the 3 High Court judges and the retired army officer. That sort of sticks with, and even today somebody has published a tribute to Rawlings, a reverse tribute, and is talking about it. It sort of sticks with the PNDC era. Where do you place that in the Rawlings legacy?
I can see at your back, the martyrs of truth. Right? I can also talk about my own Mr. Bosman, who is my senior.
Yeah.
He was the lead counsel for the former president during the
AFRC,
trial. Trial. Mr. Chikata was junior at the chambers, but even he suffered after 1981. He got arrested, as you know, locked up, because he was caught with so many people. Some people, and there was a certain perception that they were engaged in a coup or something like that, and he suffered in prison. I'm sure you know about that story. So there are lots of people who got their hands burnt during the whole process. But he learned to forgive. Mr. Bosman, over time, worked these things through himself. He claims that he got to know the Lord whilst in prison. But to answer your question directly, those are unfortunate occurrences. And I think the former president himself would recognize that it can't be right. And that's why the people were tried and those who committed were executed. There's some question marks as to whether those who were executed were the ones who really committed the offense. But you can't justify such killings. There's absolutely no way. And all those killings, those atrocities, the difficulties that we went through can't be justified. I don't think that anybody will attempt any justification. But that's the process that countries go through if they want, let me put it in a better way. Because the process of establishing a democratic process sometimes means some difficulties. Some people will be hurt, some people will be killed, some people will go through problems. But in the end, you will find that where we are is a product of what we have been through. All right? You can't justify some of the things that were done. I'm not going to do so. I don't think he himself will say that those things were
But he never apologized for it.
I'm not too sure he didn't. I don't agree with you because there were lots of times that he would say that those occasions were not good. The whippings and the lashings and those difficulties. And indeed, there are those who say that but for the fact that he was present, especially in the 79 period, a lot more would have happened.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of anger. 81 was different. But as for 79, I can tell you, Paul, a lot of things could have happened if he had not been around.
But in 81 and 81 all the way to 89, the human rights abuse occurred.
No, those ones I totally agree with you, and they can't be justified. I mean,
but should we think of that as part of the Rawlings legacy?
Well, you can say that it is part of the legacy because he was the head of state at the time, and he was running the government, so you can't run away from these things that happened. They can't be right. And I don't think you can justify. But on the balance, you've got to look at the negatives and you've got to look at the positives. The negatives, we know them. They were not good, they were bad, and some of them have fed into the way we've looked at the Constitution in 1992, going to 93. A lot of the independence, a lot of the protection that we've given to judges is because of what we have been through. And sometimes when we lawyers even threaten the judiciary, look at the statements that are made in the media, people get upset because it reminds you of where we have been. All right. So these are lessons that we pick and the country becomes better for it. So those periods were not good. You can't really justify it, and I don't think that anybody can.
And let's talk about how you met him. But before then, let me bring another aspect of Rawlings' legacy. Something that one of the people I know you admire, the late B.J. Darocha, would have wanted me to ask you. 1992's alleged rigged elections. Is it part of the Rawlings' legacy? Because Darocha and his friends put together a book entitled The Stolen Verdict. And out of that, and I like the way you put the issue of the constitutional protection, out of that then came constitutional developments in our electoral processes, so that today we are filing our second election petition as a country, and many other African countries don't even know how we're able to do it. Yesterday, it was all praise for Ghana at the Independence Square when President John Dramani Mahama, the petitioner, recognized President Akufo-Addo at the event by bowing to him and recognizing him as the president in spite of the fact that he's in court with him. So that Ghana came up for praise. But the question to you is, the allegation of the rigged elections of 1992, is it part of the Rawlings legacy?
It's always difficult to answer these questions because he was president, so you can say, well, because you're head of state, then everything that is wrong belongs to you. Though some people will argue, was it rigged? Clearly, you could see some procedural problems. The opaque nature of even the ballot boxes, the culture of silence that existed before. The terrain you can't say was even, not at all, not in the least. All right. So clearly, coming from 11 years of military rule and dictatorship, you couldn't say the terrain was going to be even at all. So clearly, there were problems, and I think you've got to accept that that particular 92 election was a beginning for the country. We grew out of it into 96, 2000, but even this current elections, there are complaints. So are you going to say that the current president, has rigged an election because somebody is challenging it? Are you getting me? So there will always be problems. Look at America. I mean, Trump is still challenged, and America's over 200 years of, elections that they've been through. But look at what happened at the Capitol. What are you going to say? That the country's democracy is under threat or is broken, or it's a legacy that there's so many things that you can say, but democracy in itself has got its own weaknesses and its own strengths. I think a country is seen to be developing if it can manage the difficulties that democracy presents. Once you can manage it, and the procedures and the law that are laid out for ventilating your views and your opinions, then democracy is growing. So in 92, when we're moving into a democratic regime, elections were held, the NPP had problems, they boycotted I think the parliamentary elections, which were held, I think, in December, but they found a way of ventilating their grievances. All this IPAC business was established because some of the comments that were made in the stolen verdict, all the improvements that were made in our ballot system, the electioneering process, polling agents, all those changes have helped to bring us where we are. So I see it as part of the process of growing our democracy, rather than say this is a legacy that somebody, will stick to him. Fine, if you met that accession, then you also got to admit that at the end of the day, he gave us this constitution that we're all living by. So you balance the two, and clearly the scales will weigh in the positive sense, as the president said yesterday, that history will be very kind to him.
When did you first hear that the Flight Lieutenant Rawlings wanted to meet with you? and how did you hear it?
Well, very interesting. It was during the World Cup, as you've indicated.
1990s World Cup.
1990 World Cup, and that's the first time that Lintas put together, the presentation on television.
Oh, it was Lintas?
Yep.
Lintas,
exactly. Jake,
okay.
fantastic. So myself, Kobne Japon, Kobne Ebois, Papa Pencil, we were the panel. But by the time we're ending, it was just myself and Kobne Japon, what's his name? Edward Fachi. Edward was hosting us, and we had a fantastic time. And I think, he was watching, and the former president loves excellent things, and I think he enjoyed my commentary and other things. So one of the programs when we finished, Elvis, Elvis, Elvis met me at the corridor and pulled me aside.
Elvis of the graphic?
Yep, of the graphic. He was a special,
of the graphic,
yep,
yeah.
He was his, kind of press secretary at the time, So Elvis pulled me aside and said, well, the president, the old man, he used the word old man. I said, which old man? I was a bit surprised that the president said, wow, okay, he admires you, wants to see you. So took me in the car, dropped me home, got to know where I was, and then later picked me up to go and meet him at then the castle. And it was fantastic because I had always wanted to meet him as a youngster. And it was great. I really enjoyed the first, occasion. Went through lots of things about how some of the tapes and the recordings that we had of him. And we discussed later big national issues, because then Mr. Chikata, there was another meeting, Mr. Chikata was present, and Captain T was also present.
In the meeting when you met him?
No, later.
Later.
There were several meetings.
Oh, you met him again and again?
Yeah, several meetings that we had together, more important discussions.
But yourself and Chachu Chikata were in the same law firm at the time, Mr. Bosman's law firm?
Yes.
That's what
Mr. Chikata, Mr. Chikata was
law firm?
Yeah, as you know, yeah. Mr. Chikata was not as regular as he used to be, but when I entered, he used to come around sometimes, and some of his processes were still going through our chambers. So, he stayed loyal to Mr. Bosman forever.
And he was teaching?
Yeah.
That law firm produced a lot of
lecturers. I mean, Professor Ivio Dankwa, Professor Kote, and Professor Ivio Foh-Amoaning was also there. That was the in thing.
Professor Foh-Amoaning is still happily with us.
The old man is still around.
90, isn't
I've not seen him in a long time, but I'm going to visit him. But it was a great chambers. It was great to practice in there. And
I'd like to take it slowly, because young lawyers are listening. It would be very, very interesting chambers. So you had Adom Bosman, the Colossus.
Yep.
You had Chachu Chikata.
Yeah, Mr. Chikata was trained there. In fact, almost
Nia
all the...
Shikote was there.
All of them. Frank Sawyer. All the great lawyers.
Frank Sawyer was there. Foh-Amoaning was there.
Ivio Dankwa.
Yep.
Yeah,
George Sapon.
George Sapon. George came in was later.
Yeah.
And then, all of them, Adom-Otchere and others were later lawyers. But almost all the great lawyers, especially from the faculty, passed through our chambers. Even Mrs. Kwenya did some practice through the chambers. Yeah.
Fui Chikata was there?
No, Fui was on the other side. He was with Joe Randolph.
The other one. Yeah.
It was kind of a square. Mr. Bosman, the current president's chambers, and then Joe Randolph. So you go to court and you meet all these great lawyers. I mean, I walked into the Supreme Court, it's about the second week of my practice at the bar, and right to the Supreme Court. It was pretty enjoyable in those days. But just to come back to the point.
Rawlings, yeah.
Yeah. So the discussions went on, and I, contributed to a few things that he wanted done. But at that stage of my life, and I must be very honest, God had intervened, and it was pretty clear that politics was not what God wanted me to do. Dad had died, as you know, and I think if he had been alive, maybe I would have received guidance. But before even he died, he was pretty clear that I had to be more prayerful about what God wanted me to do. For example, in the university, just before I went to the university, my senior brother prompted my father, tell him he shouldn't get involved in student politics. I thought it was a joke. But when we went to the first week, we got into arguments, and everybody said, he can be SRC president. So I withdrew and realized that maybe Dad was right in warning about direct politics. So, and there were some spiritual interventions in my life. So by the time I met the former president, I knew that politics directly was something that I wasn't supposed to do. All right, so to be honest, he was very disappointed.
Did he invite you to politics?
To put it mildly, yes. You know, he really wanted me to get involved in helping with things, but
with the
I was
PNDC it would be at that time.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah, but I was pretty clear in my mind. And I indicated to him that I can help on the side, give advice, but not directly involved. He was very disappointed, but one of the things I liked about him, he maintained a friendship. For example, when I was practicing, when I came out, he will always follow and know what I'm doing, and if I had a problem, he will instruct his people to help me out with the case. So I did a lot of security cases that most lawyers will run away from. And it brought in a lot of money sometimes, but you could see his hand was behind, making sure that I was not intimidated by anybody and ensuring that my life was fine.
He was a very good friend.
Yes, he was. He was. And I remember 2017 was the last time I met him with the kids. He loved boxing. Paul.
Oh, yes,
so
yes, for sure.
I met him at a tournament. I think it was an Independence Day tournament. The current president was also available, and after the fight, he was with the kids, playing with them, and Xanato was with him as well, and we had a lovely chat. I must be honest, I miss it when the mummy died, so that was the time that I missed seeing him before he kind of passed off. But even when I became president of the Ghana Boxing Authority, he was still interested in boxing, and you could say that sports was something that he loved. Don't forget that DK Poison was our first world champion. It took a long time before Azuma fought in '82 and lost against Salvador Sanchez.
Sanchez, yeah.
And the 2 years, the intervening years, before he won the title again in '84, if you want to know, it took a lot of effort from him when Amaka Amatefew was the Secretary for Sports for us to get that title. Look, we didn't have too much money at that time, but Amaka, I will tell you, that he was sponsored by the government to go to the United States, sit over there for a period of time to ensure that Azuma had the rematch and that he won. All right. And it's not Azuma was very close to him. Well, he was also, the kind of the trainer for the Armed Forces boxing team. So Azuma was very close to him. And it wasn't just Azuma and Nelson. Don't forget, Nana Kunedu also won a flyweight title during his time. And then Ike won the welterweight title on the 4th of June in '94, which was 4th June. So Ike has a special relationship, with the former president. So, and then there was Alfred Cote as well. So within a space from '82 right up to '94, we had won four world champions.
So the point you're making is that our successes in boxing in those days,
yes,
he had a big hand behind,
very significant,
pushing it and making it happen.
Very significant role.
Justice D.F. Annan actually writes about that in his book about Jerry's support for boxing.
Very much so. And the question that people ask is, why didn't we invest a lot in infrastructure? I must be honest, in those days we didn't have too much money, so you got to be very careful where you place the funds, because football was taking a chunk. And even with the Black Stars, people forget that in '82, by '81, because of our problems with Libya, we were not going to attend the Cup of Nations in '82. It was when the coup happened, that's when he instructed, Osam Dudu and others in the football, that we had to go. And if you talk, all the documentaries that I have done for the Cup of Nations documentaries, talking to all the players, they will tell you how much he inspired them to go to Libya and go and win. In fact, they will tell you that during the final game in the dressing room, the Libyans had wanted to play some hanky-panky, but then the coaches told, hey, this is revolution time. Win the cup. If you don't and you play any funny thing, you're going to have trouble going back to Ghana, because the flight lieutenant is not going to be very happy with you. And so the boys were motivated to go and play and win it. And that was the last time, we ever won the cup. So, his very influential and charismatic nature always played into our sportsmen. And I'll say this, Paul, I love them because at least for these days, the focus is on money. He focused on playing, on doing things for Ghana because he loved the country. So the emphasis was on patriotism, a love for this country, and a desire to do things for the country. But now we've moved away. I know people complain that when they won the Cup of Nations in '82, the promise was to give them something. In the end, they were given a kettle and some, I think, 2 pieces of cloth or something of that sort. The players do complain about that. and that they didn't really receive their due. That's fair. That's a fair point to make. But I think we've moved from love of country and patriotism to the at the extreme where it's all about money, and it has never worked. 2019, you and I had a debate, and I told you it was not going to work. We pushed in a lot of money. What happened?
Well, the African Cup of Nations.
Yes, in Egypt, abject failure. I told you. So I think that I love his era because the emphasis was on playing for country and loving the country. But we must have a balance. I love the President Kufuor era where the boys were treated well, the allowances were pushed up, and that's why we qualified for the World Cup. So that was good. But I think we must get the balance right. We must bring it back. We've moved too much to the extreme. And I'm talking because, as a member of the commission on the Brazil fiasco, that's what came out.
It's all about money.
Yes, all about money. And that's not right. I think we have to refocus. And I think he represents the core values of Ghanaian sportsmanship, playing for country and success for the country. The money can come later on. I think that's what probably was missing in his era, but President Kufuor probably restored that, and we must get the balance right.
Let's move back to Rawlings and politics, and I'd like to ask you a question about Rawlings that Nelson Mandela during his lifetime was asking at Harvard University about his international friends. And if you look at Rawlings' profile, and we take all the people who were friends with him, or the people that he made friends with internationally, Fidel Castro, Mohamed Sani Abacha, Captain Thomas Sankara, of course, and you have Colonel Gaddafi. These were his friends, people in Nicaragua and that kind of thing. What kind of image did they give him? Of course, later on he did he hosted Bill Clinton in Ghana.
I was going to come to that, and the
yes.
Queen and all of that.
Yes, and the Queen Elizabeth and all of that. But the people that you could tell that were his friends in the early parts, Fidel Castro and Raul Castro. And at the president's tribute, you heard that he says he used to call him Comandante.
That's the point I was
because that is how Castro and other people were referred
that's
to.
What I
and
was
he said that seems to delight Rawlings quite a bit. What kind of image do you make of him?
No,
is he the Che Guevara type? Is he the revolutionary?
Well, that's the point I was coming to.
Is that the image?
That was the era, and if you were a student at that time, those were the world icons that excited you. And you made a very good point that when you're young, you tend to want to relate with revolutionaries. You have energy, you have verve, you have vivacity, and you're boisterous. So all of those things, your icons are on the left side of politics. If you talk to the current president, he went through his own process. Yeah. In fact, I remember the sister telling a very interesting anecdote of after the Nkrumah's overthrow, running home with the socks because he had attended an Nkrumah function. So I think you can place Jerry Rawlings in that kind of category. He was young. He was a military leader. In 79, the world over, the left was strong. Left-wing politics was very strong. Don't forget Castro.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about 79, and then 81. That's always a tie-in. So the idea that the state should be taken over by people who want an improvement and leave out the bourgeoisie and the upper middle class who are exploitative and the capitalist environment, I think is something that you can't run away from. And you can see from some of these pictures that are rolling. So I will place it in that context, that he was young. So that is where he had to go. If that is so, and then he grows. I'm just going to... Then as he grows and we transit into a democratic era, look at the people that he also attracted. And you mentioned President Clinton. Look, Paul, one of the most enduring moments that I ever had was when President Clinton came to Ghana in 97. I happened to run the commentary on the ceremony at the Independence Square. And, when Clinton put on the kente cloth and walked, wow, it was imposing. I mean, I've never felt, that overcome with emotion by any leader. He was so powerful. And I remember Rawlings also stepping up, and the politics was on, but he said, "Mene America Ibaga," and there was huge uproar. And it was a very unified speech that he gave. And he also hosted the Queen. So you could see that by the time he was ending as a statesman.
Not quite, Moses. I have to bring your attention to 1997. And at the inauguration of 1997, the lead person for the inauguration was the Nigerian dictator Mohammed Sani Abacha. At that time, he was the president of ECOWAS, and according to state protocol reports, it created some tension. So that inauguration began very late in the day because people didn't want Abacha in. Members of the diplomatic corps didn't want Abacha. This was at the height of Abacha's miscareer or career as Nigerian president. Nigeria itself had become a pariah state. Sanctions were imposed in Nigeria all over the place. Abacha was the president of ECOWAS, and he headlined Rawlings's election victory of 96 and the 97 inauguration. Yeah, but that's way after Clinton had been here.
No, it wasn't way after. I mean, it wasn't way after.
Yeah, 97, Clinton was here earlier.
Yeah, Clinton came later.
Earlier.
What year did Clinton come?
Came in Jerry's first term. So
No. He came when we were ending.
97.
Yeah, thereabout. Now,
Okay.
I'll just let your
Abacha is settled in January 97.
Let your producers check
I'll let
the
them
date.
check. Can you please check Clinton and the Queen? The Queen certainly was in 2000. That's I know.
Yes, you check Clinton's visit to Ghana, certainly after. But Mohammed Abacha, I agree with you. But he was ECOWAS president. I agree that he was a pariah. He had caused a lot of problems, but he was still ECOWAS president, chairman of the ECOWAS commission. And I think it was in that capacity he came here. Did he have a friendship with the former president? I think so, because there was some comment about some money that was given, all of kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the former president tried to explain it, that they were doing elections, they had problems, and he asked him to bring, even you took some part of the money. So I think there was a certain relationship between the two of them, all right? Why he was brought in, I think it was in his capacity as chairman of ECOWAS.
But why would Rawlings be friends with Abacha when what was happening in Nigeria was happening?
Look, Paul,
Ken Saro-Wiwa and others had been killed.
I know. That was in 94. That didn't, they were not.
The Ogoni crisis.
Yeah, that was in 94. And when the problem was at its height, I don't quite remember that Abacha came here. All right.
Yeah.
But you see, international diplomacy has its own contortions. Let me just explain. So I've forgotten the name of the U.S. leader, and he was asked the question, why do you relate with bad leaders? The answer he gave was, look, if somebody doesn't relate with them, how can we move them away from the excesses? Because if you left them, then they're going to do what they're going to do, all right? So sometimes I can give you countless examples in U.S. Diplomacy and United States politics where the United States were relating with people, not because with countries, not because they love those countries, but because it was in America's interest. You get what I'm saying? Yes, that's how the cookies crumble. If you examine it morally, it's wrong, but for the interest of the country, you probably will do it. But that's not a justification. So if Abacha did things that were wrong, you can't say.
What about Yasser Arafat and Louis Farrakhan?
Well,
these were global leaders that.
Well, as I said, you could mention so many names of so many leaders that he related with. Some of them he had to do so because he was leader of this country. All right. There are so many people that can comment about some of the relationships that exist now between the current president and some presidents around the continent were not doing too well. Are you saying that the current president will relate to Yoweri Museveni? All right. If he was AU president, what is he likely to do? So sometimes you do these things, and I've indicated for good reason. The role that you're playing, if you're president, for example, of ECOWAS, and there are problems within the region, you don't, take for example, Cote d'Ivoire. Who's the president of Cote d'Ivoire now?
Alassane Ouattara.
Exactly.
In his third term.
Exactly. Was it totally positive? The circumstances under which he's now in his third, was it positive? People got killed, but he attended, the president's inauguration. What are you going to say about that? So you've got to be very careful about some of these analysis. I don't think the president will agree with everything that happened, but for good reason, which you and I will know, some of it, the cocoa relationship that we have, the $400 that has been secured that helps, poor farmers to succeed. Clearly, it's in our interest to keep our relationship with Cote d'Ivoire going. Yeah. So sometimes international diplomacy is a bit more complex and more complicated than, a simple analysis.
Well, the question was asked Mandela, as I was telling you about in Harvard, that why has he related to Yasser Arafat, Fidel Castro, and Colonel Gaddafi, given his global iconic status? And Mandela answered and said, some people think their enemies must be his enemies. But these names that he's mentioned, Castro, Fidel Castro, Yasser Arafat, and Colonel Gaddafi supported the struggle of the ANC.
That's the
so
point.
as far as he's concerned, they are human rights activists because they supported the struggle in the ANC. So it looks at, okay, let's bring Rawlings back to after he left office. And his incessant criticism of President Kufuor, all the way probably until up to the time he died. Was it a withdrawal symptom? So is it withdrawal symptom I'm looking for? Was it an attachment to the seat of government, which he had as the longest president, 19 years, and therefore psychologically he couldn't feel himself out of the decision making, and Kufuor sort of insisted that your era is over, is now my turn, and that's what probably brought the tension?
I think you hit the nail on it. I don't think the former president wanted, clearly when you've been, in the presidential seat for 19 years. When you leave, you still think you're there. And he tells a very, he's got a great sense of humor. I remember at the concert at the, is it a center where,
International Conference Center?
International Conference Center. He told a very interesting anecdote about he and the driver, they were going round the roundabout to his house, and the driver was negotiating the route to the castle. And he had to prompt the driver, hey, we're no longer there, and everybody burst into laughter. So I don't think it was a case of withdrawal symptoms. I think it was kind of a personality clash.
Okay, the Rawlings people are beating me up with text message. They said that Clinton came in 1998.
Exactly.
After Abacha. Moses is right.
Yes, exactly. I remember it because I did the commentary, so I do actually remember. So the thing is, I don't think it was more of some personality clash, because as you indicated, something happened before the handover. President Kufuor had to, tone down and say, well, we will give you all the respect that you deserve. And I think he did so. Former President Kufuor did all that he can to contain him. Soon after the handover, I think once in a while the former president will call him, can you come on? They will sit and talk. They went on 3, 4, 5 times. And clearly former President Kufuor would think that, hey, who's in charge here? Are you getting me? So he begins then to correct and reassert his authority as a president of the country. So, the orders that were being backed at him, he was not obeying them, and that is what created a bit of the tension.
But he also asked Rawlings not to go to Birmingham to ride horses anymore.
I think that's what, and the privileges that were withdrawn. I think it was, as I said, a bit of the tension, a kind of a personality clash. And I'm giving you the background. I think it was because the former president wanted to dictate and be as if he was still president. But hey, I'm the new president. I can give you some latitude, but after some time, I have to assert my authority. The same thing happened to Professor Mills. Don't forget when Professor Mills took over, the former president is always a leader. He was going to the airport and behaving as if he was president. That's what it brings me to a point. I think the current president managed the relationship beautifully, and
current president, I'll come to that in a minute. But on Professor Mills, which is after Kufuor, and Rawlings had fought hard in the 2008 election to get Professor Mills to be elected, albeit in the third round of a very close election. Now, then he became enemy number one to Mills. Same criticism against the NDC. We've seen Kwame Nkrumah write in his book that they deliberately trained young people to attack Rawlings and all of those things, leading up to Rawlings' wife seeking the nomination against Mills as sitting president in Sunyani and all of that. So he was unhappy with Kufuor. He should have been unhappy with Mills because that's his protege. He brought him into politics, and Mills became vice president and president. What was it about Rawlings that he was unhappy with his own party's president that he had developed, his protege?
There's so many reasons are given, one of which is that there was an unsigned agreement or unwritten agreement before Prof became president that looking at his health status, he wasn't going to go for a second term.
Oh, I see.
And once Prof, broke that covenant, then it put the Rawlingses in a certain, light. And, I don't know how true it is. I don't have the facts to verify, but it seems to be that there was some underlying problem. And this could be one of the reasons why, the former president was always biting at him. And I think Professor Mills, Prof was also a very peaceful person, and he probably surrounded himself with the sort of people that Rawlings, the former president, didn't like, all right? And, you know, politics is always about power play, isn't it? Who wants to control what? And Prof also wanted to assert himself. And in asserting himself, he probably surrounded himself with people that the former president didn't really like, all right? Like, you know, Captain Chikata, you know, Tutubi Kwachi, was the other guy, you know, quite a number of...
PVOB.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the people
but
that...
why would Rawlings not like them? These are the same people who
read Kwame Nkrumah's book and look at the time when it came out. You will understand why probably he felt that these were people who would betray him. In the end, that's what happened, all right? Who would write a book and publish it at the time that it was done? I love Prof a lot. I have a lot of respect for him, but I think the timing and the publication of that book was a no-no, not 4 months before an election.
But that election was John Mahama's election.
No, I'm talking about 2020.
Yeah, I know, but it was John Mahama was on the ballot. Rawlings was not.
No, but you see, this is the founder of the party. Whether you like it or not, he's the driver of the NDC as a party in terms of charisma. Everybody knows this, you know, and you know, anybody within the NDC, I'm going to repeat this, who thinks that you can walk away from Jerry Rawlings' tradition and throw it out the NDC, that's a waste of time. It's not even very clever. You can't do that. And you can see that former President Dramani Mahama is, you know, positioning it properly now, you know, taking over the 31st December. In the past 31st December, probably because of he probably wouldn't have been there. But after his death, they celebrated it. You know, that's the NDC recognizing that you can't do away with this man's image. You can't. It's not very clever. And I don't think, you know, they will do so. So with his absence, I think he probably will be greater than when he was alive. Because I think at the end, and, you know, I had, was it one of his flight, was it Fojo or so? You know,
the group captain.
Yes. They celebrated him, I think, on the Sunday. They did
his mates.
Exactly, his mates. And he said that the former president died with a lot of pain in his heart because he had wanted to respond to what Mr. Ahoy had written, you know, and he didn't like the way they were biting at him. I'm not too sure that was a very clever strategy. No, it's not.
The Ahoy book publication.
Yes, the timing of it and all of that. I think.
So there has been some betrayal in the NDC
Precisely.
as far as Rawlings was concerned.
Yep. And it hurt him a lot.
And that got Mrs. Rawlings to exit the party she had worked so hard for. She exited the party and formed a new party. And in the tribute, it showed up. It showed up in her tribute.
That's the point I'm making.
She talked about wicked people, wicked crooks not recognizing JJ.
Precisely, yeah. That's the sort of thing the NDC will have to manage. Do I think the former President Mahama can manage? I think so, because, you know, fast track, and, you know, let's roll back to 2012, just before Professor Mills passed away. There was a lot of heat, as you know, between the two of them. But as soon as Prof passes on and former President Mahama takes over, there was a lot of quieting, if you remember. And, you know, there was a good relationship between the two of them. I think that in his death, and I know John pretty well, I think they will find a balance. Because they have to find a balance if they want to be successful. You can't downplay his image and hope that you're going to be successful. That is strategically the problem that the NDC faces, how to handle his image, you know, because, and they will have to also manage the former First Lady. I don't think going at her, tongs, hammer and tongs and throwing dirt at her is going to help, not at all, you know, because you need her. To be honest with you, one of the greatest strategies that the NPP adopted, and I think you can say that it was brilliant. The president in his tribute talked about visiting former President Rawlings in his house. Don't you see that was a virtual coup d'etat? Because he had managed to get the founder of the party of the opposition into his camp. Anybody who is a strategist would know that, wow, that's a huge flip. You know, and you know the people behind it. I think was absolutely fantastic, you know. And look at the way it ended. He ended his tribute. Beautiful, you know, anecdote that he passed, that when the former president's mother died and you're having the funeral, the pastors ask for prayers for him, and then he goes forward, but then he remembers that the current president had also lost his mother. So he actually invites him to come and stand by him, and then whispers to him that, to the priest, he also lost his mother. Let's pray for him. That's true friendship. And that's what he stands for. So I think you've got to hand it over to the current president. Great strategy. And the NDC will have to deal with that. They politics.
Even though Rawlings is dead?
Yes, I'm saying, Paul, politics about numbers. And if the NDC or I'm just making a general.
But the NDC people say that if Rawlings' influence was that significant, having indicated his clear preference for Nana Akufo-Addo, the results of the election shows that the Ghanaian people, at least in the parliamentary election, voted massively for the NDC.
There are lots of reasons that we can assign, Paul. I mean, you and I can do it another day. Some of it spiritual, some of it physical. I can give you countless reasons why.
Spiritual?
Of course.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you have a parliament. When you say the battle is the Lord's, it means a lot. Trust me. The only person, and I'm going to say this without any shadow of doubt, I trust the president, because when you see him, when he says the battle is the Lord, he believes it. And people don't know, he's had his own spiritual experiences with God, everybody said, he can't be president. Oh, somebody from Aceh. But he prayed, he went to the Lord, and God gave him the throne. That's why the difference was so huge.
Between who?
In 2016.
16, yeah.
That's the point I'm making. So when he says the battle is the Lord, it has meaning for him. Most people don't realize that. But this is a man who has lived his mantra. He has felt it. Question, the party, the NPP party, did they feel the same battle is the Lord's? I'm going to give you some examples. Look, when this comprehensive sexuality education came in, one of the things that all the parties agreed was that in their manifesto, they were going to insert clauses clearly stating their reaction to the whole LGBT issue. Read the NPP manifesto. Do you see it in there?
No, it's not there.
Some of us tried to impress upon them. You see, when you have a covenant with God, He delivers to you 63 seats. Then you don't deliver your side of the, what do you think will happen? And this is a parliament that, I don't know whether you remember, passed a legislation legalizing a certain form of cannabis. Really? A parliament that had been brought to power on the mantra of the battle is the Lord's? And this was against a lot of complaints by a lot of the ecumenical leadership and technocrats like the NACOP head, and then Dr. Osei, who's the mentor. They wrote, reasoned, papers. Because of that, the president refused to assent to that bill. He took it back to Parliament, and they overrode his veto, and they passed it in May. This is.
Oh, the president vetoed that cannabis.
Yes, he didn't want to sign that legislation. That's a fact. One traces the history.
Okay, so this battle of the laws thing, you say that saw Akufo-Addo through
to
give him a clear victory.
I think the president related to the mantra better than the party did. And that's a fact. And I'm saying this for the current parliament and for the current politicians. Look, it means a lot spiritually. This country, because of prayer, we are where we are because of prayer. And we're going to pray. So if leaders want to lead this country, then they must respond to what they believe in. You can't say one thing and do other things. I think that Parliament, they did a lot of great things under Professor Michael Quay, passing a private members bill, lots of things that they did that were right, but there were some fundamental things that they did that ran counter to God's purposes. And I think that affected them spiritually. Or other physical matters.
So not having to do with NDC's popularity?
No, it's part of it. There are a lot of other physical factors, because there are physical and spiritual factors in these matters. Okay. But I am just relating to you how these spiritual factors matter. And this current parliament, indeed, we have a coalition. We are going to appeal to them to take out that clause. If they don't, we're going to pray. You see, when leadership is handed over to you, you have a duty to perform that role and protect this country. And Paul, especially when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are in the White House, you've seen the transgender, secretary that he has appointed, and his desire to push LGBT agenda. Clearly what it means is that there's an obligation on this current government to stand properly and be strong, because there's going to be a lot of pressure coming our way. And so for all the leadership, that's a message that I can throw out there.
That's interesting. That's all talking about Rawlings. Let's come now to current issues. One of your good friends I know the young lawyer Godfrey Dame has been nominated by the president to become what will be, we think, the youngest Attorney General in the history of our country. And I'm sure that you received this one with delight. Meanwhile, there's Parliament's Appointments Committee is looking very, very tight. First of all, on some of the nominations that you have had, first with Godfrey Dame.
I think it's a great choice. I know Gloria. I don't know why she's gone. I remember when I came to the bar, she was one of the ladies who took my hand, and she was very nice to me. I go to the same church where we're very good friends, and I think she did some good job at the Attorney General's department. But I'll say this for Godfrey: for a young man, he's really got the head of a 70-year-old practitioner. He's solid with his law. He has a deep understanding of the law. It's not just the mechanical bit of the law. It's the way you appreciate the broad spectrum of the law and the jurisprudence and the policy of the law. And he also relates well at the bar. I mean, I've seen him in the Supreme Court, and his relationship with the members of the bar is excellent. So I think he will be a good Attorney General. What he needs to do is to listen a lot more, talk less, and probably relate more with more seniors at the bar and get proper advice. And I think he'll be very, very successful because his technical knowledge of the law is flawless. I think he'll be
You've seen other nominees. You want to comment on any of them?
Yes, I think the president has done well, but you can see where he's going. He's done well with maintaining Alan because you have AFTA, AFCTA, which has to be implemented. So you've got to keep him there. You can understand why the Minister of Health, because he did a fantastic job with COVID. I think he will maintain Okoboy because Oko is a doctor and he maintains.
So they've said that people who lost their seats will not be deputy ministers. So
I think in Oko's case they will make an exception. Why do I say so? Because he was one of the most articulate, and not just articulate, he knew and understood this COVID thing. And the technical work must be done. Adom-Otchere is not a doctor, so sometimes he misses those nuances. And you need somebody of Okoboy's quality because that's his area, virology, and he's great. That's the point. I think it will do well for the president to maintain him. And you see, this illness, because it's a pandemic, it is more of communication because people's behavior must change. And if you don't get a good communicator, you're going to have a problem. In Okoboy, you've got a good technical person, knowledge of the medicine, solid, not just general medicine, but the area of virology, because it's a virus and all that kind of stuff. He's very good, but he communicates very well as well, because the public must get the right information. All right, so I think that combination, you can't beat him when it comes to that. So I think it would be good if the president maintains it. I was a bit worried about railway because I thought Joe had done well enough. I don't know whether his earlier comments about, most likely. I think that cost him. I think that his deputy, Andy, Andy is a good friend of mine, good young man. They did a good job of it. They have laid the solid foundation, and I thought that Joe was going to be allowed to grow it. I don't know how Amo is going to fare over there. I think education, to be honest with you, you had a chat with, Honorable Napo. I think Iduchum is a solid technocrat for that area. I've dealt with both of them, and I think that that's his area. I think he will do a fantastic job. Do we relate?
Meanwhile, Napo is going over to energy.
That's a bit of a, because you see, energy, if you compare him to Boakye Jacko, you will see that it's a very technical area. I don't know how he can come to grasp those very technical areas of the energy. It's very, very technical.
It's technical within which area? Finance or law?
All of it, because the science of it, and then there's a law of it, there's a regulatory aspect of it, there's the chemistry of it. It's a whole, ball game. The gas, it's a very technical area, and you talk to Boakye Jacko, he will explain. It's very technical. If you don't have the technical knowledge, you'll be bamboozled. And it's very easy for people to fool you with figures, all right? And the facts, and the whole energy sector.
Can Oforiatta has been maintained for Ministry of Finance?
I think that's going to be the president's toughest task to get, Ken through. I think he's done very well. That's what most people don't know. I think Japan, all those things aside, there are lots of things that the current government has.
Creativity of Ken.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. Look, we now have a commodities exchange People don't realize that's arbitraging the value of our commodities. That's very good. He's kind of really finessed the economy and they're changing the structure of it. I think that's what they wanted to do with the Japa thing. So the general principle was good. The devil was in the detail, Paul. I've talked to you about it. I think that's where they got it, a few things wrong. And I think they need to build a consensus and get it done. Because the whole idea that, look, people are earning off the mineral values that we have has been something I've been complaining about for a long time since I came back from England after my master's degree. Because, you know, when they mine, they take it away from us. If they do the mining, and then the value, they also double it and take it away. Why should that be the case? So I listened to Gabi. I think that's a fantastic thing. But as I said, the devil was in the detail. And he probably will have a few problems. I just hope that he can probably skip through.
But he's reduced the numbers of his ministers from 120 to 85.
That had to be done. I mean, Paul, I think some of the ministries, you know, like the regional reorganization, they're finished. You know, the role is finished. Oh. I think senior minister also had a go. So I think that the readjustment was fine.
We're running out of time. Finally, what was your impression about courts today?
Sports.
Supreme Court. Mr. Chikate's application for review was heard and refused. I
think, and I watched it, I think Mr. Chikate raised very substantial constitutional arguments. The Supreme Court didn't address it. I think they probably, they just said they refuse a review. I think they should have addressed it so it would have helped build our law. Because the whole review jurisdiction, people talk about there must be an end to litigation. But there's a difference between when the Supreme Court is exercising its original jurisdiction in a petition, when there's a review in this stage, you could say that the review was just an appeal. All right. The question is whether or not the standards should be the same or should be a bit more relaxed. The other thing that I thought they also had to address, which they didn't, I haven't seen the ruling, but I hope that they address it, will be what is it, because the rules of court committee, by passing CI 99, by in no means are fundamentally changing the rules, the constitutional norms that govern civil procedure in this country. They are not. All right. So the question is whether or not the time frame which everybody is worried about, or the interrogatories, whether they are allowed or not, run counter to the constitutional standards of fair play, of fair trial, as set out in Article 19, Clause 13, for example. I didn't hear any of the lawyers mention that, but that's the fundamental constitutional provision on civil procedure, Article 19, Clause 13. That's there. I heard Mr. Chikate make an argument on Article 296.
That's discretion.
Yes, exactly. Candidate, no. But the real core constitutional provision was Article 19, Clause 13, as to whether or not, saying that the interrogatories cannot be administered run counter to those constitutional provisions of fair play and fair trial and reasonable time, because that's what Article 19, Clause 13 indicates. I think the Supreme Court should
you think the Supreme Court should have been a bit more open
yeah,
about
well, I've not seen. It seems to me that they felt that the interrogatories were not necessary.
That's what they said.
They
were irrelevant.
Angle. Yeah,
and they were a fishing expedition of sorts.
Exactly, and to be honest, the cases Rofi and Kavokian fishing interrogatories are not allowed.
Yeah,
and if you look at Order 22 itself, it indicates that the interrogatories must relate to matters of dispute between the parties. So it must be reflected in the case, the petition that the parties have brought. Because if it's on the basis of the pleadings, or in this case the petition, that the interrogatories are proceeding from. You don't need the interrogatories to set up a case in any way. All right.
The Chikate's argument was that all of what he is asking in the interrogatories have to do with the validity of the election, the validity of the declaration.
Yeah.
Of the election.
If that was the case, then that's fair.
That's what point he's been making.
But the argument, as I can see it, seems to me the Supreme Court judges are of the opinion that the interrogatories they are not vital to those issues, the case that he has set up in his petition. That's their conclusion. Whether they articulated it in their ruling, I've not seen the ruling. But I mean, the ruling that Mr. Chikate read that said that you can't even, by CI 99, you can't even bring a motion for amendment or join that. That is way off the mark. If that was reflected in the, I have not seen the ruling. But clearly, that was a fundamental error of law if that was what was in the ruling.
You don't agree with the door closed to joinder? You don't agree?
It can't happen. How can CI 99...
I've met people who've said, for instance, that this is a very major case. Why shouldn't the Attorney General be joined in the matter so that people can hear the view of the government lawyer, the principal legal advisor to the government? People agree with the joinder of a political party, but certainly not the Attorney General. And the door is closed to the Attorney General.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. You see, but my own view is the CI 99 still itself is subject to the constitutional provisions. So
it's very much so.
That's the point. So you can interpret and argue Article 19, Clause 13, because it says that in the determination of the extent or the existence of a civil obligation or right, the court has to be fair, and to do it. If a party brings an action, it has to be fair and to do it within reasonable time. What is fair? If by the joinder, because the purpose of joinder is to make sure that all matters in dispute are finally and effectively determined. If the joinder will help in terms of the policy of the law in resolving these matters, that joinder must be allowed. So I'm saying that it seems to me that the Supreme Court, I have to wait and listen to or read more of the argument. They don't have to be mechanical with saying, oh, we're bound by CI 19 and that's 99, that's the end of it. I don't think that's what they're saying, though. But if that is the impression, it has to be corrected, because CI 19 itself is subject to the constitutional civil procedural norms, as I've quoted to you. And if in doing so, CI 99 falls foul of the Constitution, those provisions in CI 99 itself will be unconstitutional and have to be declared as such.
Your students are waiting for your book. When is it coming out?
Well, the manuscript is here, Paul.
That's it. That's a huge one.
Civil
procedure rules.
Yes.
High Court civil procedure rules.
Yes, it's also on CI 47, but I'm going to deal with other procedure, rules like the Court of Appeal rules and the Supreme Court rules. The beauty of this is that I've provided what I call practitioners' guidance, because you read the rules and you're supposed to be guided. So I've added a practitioner's guidance. I'm also going to do some comparative studies because our procedure just doesn't exist in a vacuum. I have some references from Nigeria, from Zambia, and the Commonwealth as a whole. And because we hook up from the British, you've got to trace the history. For example, what are interrogatories? Why do we have what's the policy behind interrogatories? It proceeds from what we call judicial accountability.
What are you going to call the book? Is it?
Well, I'm
still putting it together.
Yes, I will.
But it's coming out this year, I hope, 2021.
Yes, definitely by the end of the year it's going to come out.
Oh, wow,
and you're going
wow.
to
I
be
can't
one
miss
of the
that.
first people to
I cannot
receive
miss
it.
that. I can't miss that.
I'm hoping the old man will autograph it for
He
me.
certainly should. He certainly should. The president should.
Great.
And
lovely.
I'm sure that if Godfrey Dami gets the nod of Parliament and becomes Attorney General,
I think he will.
He will be delighted with an occasion like that.
I think he will.
Thank you so much, Moses. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. It's 11 minutes past 11 in the night. We normally would have closed by this time, but everyone has been enjoying the conversation. And we're going to put that in Facebook. And I was just writing, those of you saw me writing. So I was writing the different themes that we get out of this program. So we have Rawlings itself. We have Rawlings on sports. We have Rawlings international relations. We have Rawlings after president. We have election 2020 and the NDC claim. We have nominees of President Akufo-Addo for ministerial. And we have John Mahama's election petition. All of that by Moses Foh-Amoaning. It will be on Facebook. In all of those different headlines tomorrow morning. Thank you so much, Moses. And thank you, viewers, for watching and staying with us. Forgive us for our transmission on DSTV earlier was not working. It came up later on, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. Good night.